Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Resume Workshop. So this is the first one of these that we've done so far. It has been a long time coming, and we are joined by Ivan Mendoza. We did a session with Ivan a couple of months ago, you may remember, about how Ivan landed his dream role at Apple. And as we could tell from that session, the resume was a big part of that success, and it was successful landing you like a variety of interviews. So Ivan knows his stuff. I've reviewed many instructional design resumes for people in the boot camp and just people I've helped over the years. So we're not exactly resume coaches or experts, but we're just going to be trying our best, sharing what's worked for us and the people we've helped. And we have 4 resumes lined up today to review together. So yeah, we have a loose outline. I see there's a great turnout today, so we will try to keep an eye on the chat. We have a lot of ground to cover, and maybe we should just dive into it. Ivan, you might be muted. Oh, there you are. Cool.
No, sorry. Hey, everyone.
All right, thanks for joining us again here, and let's start reviewing some resumes. Okay, so our first resume is from Gia. So a few of these people are from the bootcamp, and we also grabbed someone from the TPLD. So the teacher community. So we wanted to make sure we reviewed a teacher resume because I know many of you are teachers trying to transition into this space, and we need help with modifying that language. But first up, we are looking at Gia's resume. So Ivan, do you want to start us off? What should we look at first here?
Well, I mean, I think an obvious one is kind of the photo, right? Let's knock that one out.
Sure. Including a photo on a resume, is it a good idea?
Yeah. I mean, I think based on what I've read and what I know about how, how resumes are used, I don't think you need a photo on a resume. Number one, I think it takes up valuable space where you could, put stuff about your experience that could actually, fit the job role. But also, I mean, I think it's just unless it's something that like specifically helps you get the job. I don't know, unless you look like the Adonis or something, that wouldn't help you anyway. But unless you're like I don't know, in the entertainment business or something, where a headshot is needed, I don't think you need a photo.
Okay, so maybe not necessary. I think about it, I guess, like how I think about portfolio websites, like a photo can make it more personal and like establish more of a connection maybe. But oh yeah, I could see how it wouldn't really be necessary, right? We really want to see the experience.
Yeah. That's a great point about the portfolio, right? The portfolio is much bigger. Like most resumes, probably going to be one page, right? The portfolio is an online infinite canvas where, you can definitely go. Like I've put photos in my portfolio for sure.
Right.
So that's where you have a little more space to be a little more personal, I think.
Right. Okay, good. Okay, and since this resume is 2 pages, right? I mean, most cases when I'm helping people with their resumes, I'm trying to get it down to 1 page. And so if a photo is taking up valuable real estate, maybe we can do without. Also, name, very big here. And we have some big margins at the top. So I don't know, looking at this, like I get the sense we could probably get this down to 1 page. With some,
Yeah, I'd say I think that there are probably different rules of thumb out there, but I think the rule of thumb that I'm more familiar with is anywhere around like 10 years of experience, like relevant experience that you'd actually want to put in your resume. You're probably good sticking with 1 page.
Okay, right. That seems like a good rule of thumb.
And I see some comments about like the ATS not being able to read images, and that's also a great point. Like I'm pretty sure no ATS is going to pull the image into your profile online. So it's kind of just wasted space in general.
Good point. And ATS, for people who aren't familiar, applicant tracking system, it's the software that reads and parses and I guess rates your resume before it gets in front of like a real human, right? So probably be talking about that a bit throughout this workshop. But okay, so we could probably make the title smaller. We could probably do without a photo on the resume. And then these titles. So we have a title here, and then this profile. Right? I'm an instructional designer in training who's passionate about learning and creating learning content. And sometimes I see this as like a whole, like a summary, like a paragraph.
Hmm.
How do we feel about that?
Yeah, I know you are kind of not a fan, right? Is that correct?
I think generally I recommend people don't do that. But yeah,
Yeah, and I've heard it kind of both ways, honestly. So when I was looking at, I was like getting feedback from recruiters about just resumes in general, and like I had one recruiter who's really, well seasoned, 20 plus years of experience, and he said he actually did recommend that. He liked it. And I had
nice.
another recruiter friend who works in, with highly technical roles, and he said he doesn't really care. It doesn't matter to him. So I think it could go both ways, but for me personally, I have included it just because it is like if you have a lot of experience, I don't think it's necessary. Like I would agree, but if especially if you're trying to fill in some gaps and you're maybe transitioning, it is I think a good place for you to quickly summarize your experience for the recruiter or hiring manager, whoever's looking at this resume,
Mm,
and kind of giving them a preview of what you're about, just in one quick paragraph that I mean, they're not gonna spend much time on this anyway. So it's kind of enticing them to read a little bit more, is what I've
nice.
heard. And yeah, it can provide a little more um, concise context, especially if your resume has some dots that they probably have to connect.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess when I see them, most of the time it reads kind of the same. It's like I'm a passionate instructional designer who cares about problem solving, and like they all read very similar and like kind of like keyword stuffing. But I can see how, yeah, if it's just like a concise summary of your experience and positioning that in a way that makes you qualified for an instructional design role, I see how that could work for you.
Yeah,
Um, but
that's a
most of
good
the time I
point.
read them and I'm like, I can't picture a human like reading this. I feel like they would just skip it because they're all kind of similar. But yeah, I can imagine there are better implementations of that than others.
Yeah, well, one thing that is helpful, I think, that Gia here is missing is years of experience. I think that's something you definitely want to put in like a summary or profile, if you're going to
Nice.
have one, because for the recruiter it's really easy for you to say, okay, this person has 5 plus years of experience, therefore they're not automatically disqualified from this role. So that is something I would include if you are including a profile or summary.
Nice. Yeah, the instructional designer in training language, it's kind of like I'm like a junior, I'm looking for like a junior role or something like that. But if you position it in, I mean, I know we can see some instructional design responsibilities like throughout here probably. Needs analysis, self-paced training modules, using Canvas, needs analysis. This is already back in 2018. Um, so yeah, I like your idea about using a profile to kind of connect the dots. Like I see, yeah, litigation assistant experience. I'm sure there are skills you are using here that would be useful as an instructional designer, right? I mean, because our field is so interdisciplinary, usually you can pick something out that highlights an instructional designer's responsibility, even if you don't know it at the time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And especially like as we scroll down, like you just did, like if you just give them the experience, I don't know, like for anyone just looking at this resume right now, it can seem kind of disjointed. Like let's just be honest, right? It's like, okay, are you an instructional designer, or are you an instructional designer in training, or are you an educator, or are you a litigation assistant? Because there are a couple of those roles, right? So
Yeah.
it's your job, right? And you can do everyone can do this. It's your job to try to make it as simple as possible. Treat it like a learning experience almost, right? Like make the complex simple and make it easy for them to see you as a fit for whatever job you're applying for.
Good. And it sounds like on a resume like this, where maybe the roles are a bit more varied, maybe something like the profile or a couple sentences to fill in those gaps for the hiring manager or recruiter would be helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, good. And then I saw people talking about portfolios. Yeah, that's one of my biggest suggestions, right? Is like the first thing beneath your name basically is that link to your portfolio, or basically don't let someone miss your portfolio URL if you have it. So don't have it like hiding somewhere here in the sidebar. If you have a portfolio site, probably gonna want it like in this space right here.
Yeah, did
But I
this
don't.
person not have a portfolio?
They do, but I don't know why it's not linked on here. Maybe it's still getting brought to its final form. So
Yeah, for me, like I think my portfolio was right under my name. So
yeah,
that's
good.
especially like I know we have like, a lot of people who are transitioning careers, right? Especially
Yep.
if that's your situation. If you don't have like in your experience like instructional designer, and then other L&D positions in your experience,
Yeah.
like I think everybody already knows this already, but yeah, that portfolio is going to be especially important, because that's going to show that you know what you're doing more than
Right.
anything.
Good. Okay, should we talk? Let's talk maybe a bit about the specific language used for each position.
Okay, yeah,
So if we look at this graduate research assistant role, and just like the format in general, it seems there's this like one sentence responsible for, and then there are the bullet points. And I was a little confused about this because usually I just see like the bullet points.
sure.
So it seems like this is kind of like, yeah, just like a summary overall of what the role was all about. I guess that's my interpretation.
Yeah,
Provided, yeah,
I think I've seen this. This is definitely like a type of resume format, where I think, yeah, in the paragraph, you kind of summarize what the role is about, if it requires explanation. And then the bullet points are kind of more or less the highlights. I yeah, I'm not an expert on like resume formats and what works and what doesn't, but just as far as the examples that I've seen, yeah, I would agree with you, Devlin. They're mainly bullets. I think if the role requires a little bit more context, then maybe you can go with paragraphs. It should be consistent though for each position. So stick with
right.
one format for each. But I think bullets are a lot more impactful,
Yeah,
because I think you should be focusing on highlights anyway, as much as possible. Like, not what your responsibilities were, because I'm already looking. If you scroll down, I don't know, like these first two positions start with responsible
right.
for.
They all do.
Okay, so that that's, to me, that's wasted space. That's, the recruiter or whoever doesn't need to see that. Like, we get it, and you could be using that valuable space for actual impact that you made, not just things that you had to do, because every graduate research assistant is responsible for that. But what made you different, and what makes you different as it applies to this role? What did you achieve? That's what you can make clear with bullets, I think.
Yeah, yeah, they're more concise, right? They're more concise. Like because we could include all of these pieces as bullet points if we wanted to. Um, provided research support to this team instead of the responsible for piece. I think that's kind of what you're
Exactly.
getting at. Just
Yeah.
looking to like from a real estate perspective and how and the hierarchy here, I think it's probably more typical to have the role be the bolded piece, right?
I've seen it both ways. It
Okay.
depends. It's up to you. It really is up to, if
Yeah.
you think, if you're more proud of the company, I guess, if you think that's more important and you want that to stand out, then you can certainly have that first or bolded. I've seen it both ways.
Okay, nice. And then for the dates, we could probably move this into this column over here somehow, just so that we don't have three lines and then one line. Could probably save a line for each role if we use like this two column kind of layout.
Maybe that's a judgment call. I think it's fine, as is personally, but if you are tight on space and you want to save a line, then yeah, you can do that. One thing that I've also learned in my studies of resumes is that you want to limit like formatting in the Word doc or whatever you're using to build your
Oh,
resume.
right.
You want to limit formatting as much as possible. You want it to be as text-based as possible. Make it easy for the computer to read your and parse your resume.
Good. Good
You don't
insight.
you don't want a bunch of like tables in the some tables are fine, like if it's necessary. Like that remote is probably in a table, that remote word.
Yeah, maybe.
But you don't want a bunch of like, icons and, stuff that's not text because for the system, it's harder to read.
Good point. Okay. And then should we look at specific language? So my biggest suggestion when I start looking at a resume with someone is like every bullet point should probably like we should be able to apply that to an instructional design role. And then when I was talking to you about this, you took it a step further, and it's not just like the bullets should make you qualified for an instructional design role. They should make you qualified for the specific role that you're applying to, because you tailor your resume based on yeah, like every role you were applying for. It sounded like.
If you're like really serious and you really want it, then yes.
Yeah,
And it's not just me. I've heard it from, resume experts out there.
yeah.
Go, Google it, YouTube it if you're not familiar. But I think most of us have probably heard that, right? You want to tailor it to the job description if you really want it. And a lot of that is because of the system, I think, right? So let's see. Like
So
a
I
lot
know
of,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say a lot of it is keyword based. So when you look at the job description, I really want to encourage everyone, if you're not doing this already, like the job description is what you have. You also have like the company website and LinkedIn,
Yeah.
but the job description is literally your cheat sheet. If you really want this job, use the same language as the job description, and you can find clues as you read the job description for what you should highlight in your resume, what you should put in your resume in the first place, what you should really highlight and play up. And also, if you do get an interview, it literally tells you like what they're probably going to ask you about, right?
Yeah.
So definitely want to pay attention to those descriptions.
Okay, we should probably move on to the next resume pretty soon, but maybe we'll just dive into this. So we asked each person to give us a job listing that they would like basically a job interest a job posting they'd be interested in applying for. And so we could
Yeah,
look at kind of tailoring the resume. So I guess these are the language, right? Duties and responsibilities. We can see the exact language that they're using. And this is probably, I mean, am I right in this? This is probably what the ATS system will be evaluating your resume against. Is that right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you want to find trends. One thing that I did not do that I saw on LinkedIn recently, that's just like a quick little tip for people. If you like Google like word cloud maker, or if you already have a favorite
Oh,
word cloud
nice.
maker, like copy and paste this whole description, put it in the word cloud thing, and it'll show you like, the biggest, most often occurring words, right?
That is so funny. Yeah, that's interesting.
And I was dumb. For what I've done in the past is I literally like counted and bolded each word. And I mean, I think that still has its place because sometimes you'll have like instructional design. That's two words, but it's technically one thing. Um, but yeah, word
Yeah,
cloud
right.
thing is a nice tip I recently learned about.
Nice. But okay, but the idea is we want to use some of these verbs, right? Like in the language we're using on the resume.
Yeah. So
Maybe be
plan, create,
creative.
develop.
This is interesting. Maybe that's something you talk about in like a summary or profile somewhere.
Yeah. I've done that myself, actually. Yeah, and make sure. I think this is also something where you can vet the job itself, right? If they're asking for someone who's creative and asked to propose training solutions, make sure you want that. Make sure you'll be happy with that, and that fits who you are. But also, yeah, you want to highlight maybe ways in which you've proposed solutions in your past experiences too.
Yeah. So just like some ideas just to show some examples here. I mean, I was seeing We're a litigation paralegal. We've been creating some self-paced training modules. Maybe for something like this, we could say proposed creative training solutions to help my fellow paralegals or something like that.
Exactly. And if you go back to the other one, the job description, that second bullet point actually, it literally lists out the kinds of training that they're looking for, right?
Yes.
So if you have experience creating self-paced training, micro-learning, then why not use those words?
Yeah, exactly.
And insert that into the, instead of just saying training modules, you could say self-paced training modules. And
Micro learning, yeah. All of those pieces. Obviously, if it's accurate, right?
If it's accurate, don't
Oh,
lie.
this looks good.
Please
Let's
don't lie.
copy and paste this. I could spin it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
then you'll get exposed later on.
yeah. But this is, yeah, this is helpful to see. Maybe we should take a look at the next resume. But that's the idea, right? We try to mirror our bullet points to the job description.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And one other note about this is just using strong verbs. So I see we have like assisted in conducting. If I see that, I'm suggesting just drop the assisted in, unless that's like a specific skill we're looking for. But assisted in preparation is just prepared, right?
Right. And even then, I think this is another situation where Google or whatever your favorite search engine is can help you out. Just search for strong resume verbs. And
yes, I always do that. Yeah. When I'm starting on a resume, that's what I used to always do.
Yeah.
I went to a super helpful workshop on that in college, and they like hand you a one-page sheet of all these really strong verbs, and that like changed the game for me with resumes. So
yeah,
very helpful tip there. Nice. Okay, let's take a look at Joanna's resume.
Somebody asked the question. So somebody asked me if I used bullet keywords in my resume. I used bullets in the experience, and for me personally, I did use. I did list out skills. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to as well. I do list out skills because I think that also helps make it very clear what skills you have, especially if they mention specific types of training, like we just saw, self-paced training, or if they mention specific tools like Articulate Storyline, for example. I think it's just easy to list those out for whoever's reading it.
Yeah, good suggestion. So so it doesn't necessarily say keywords and then a list of keywords. Or I've heard people like doing that and then making it like white and like size 2 font and stuff.
Oh, that. No.
Yeah, I've
never done that.
But I think the suggestion is, yeah, weave keywords into everything else. And yeah, skills, I had that too, because that's a good opportunity to kind of list keywords without just saying here are keywords. So
yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
yeah, I don't think that's a valid recommendation. I don't know if that's actually effective. But let's see this. So Joanna's a little, I know we were a little cramped for space. We wanted to get this onto one page. Joanna's, we've already workshopped a little bit, so maybe it's a little further along with the language. But maybe we should, well, first let's talk about the name, right? So Ivan, I think we could probably cut some stuff out of this to get the name in the top left. I think the thinking of having it in the right was initially we wanted people not to miss the portfolio, and it was like over here with some other information. But I'm sure we can make some room to get the name above the portfolio.
Yeah, sure.
We'll see. That might be something we take a look at. But yeah, very simple, like traditional kind of design, it seems like here.
I like this design, yeah.
So yeah, nothing too fancy, black and white. Instructional designer and e-learning developer. So these are the type of roles Joanna is going to be going for, and we see the self-employed experience from 2018. And originally it was for like a specific client, but maybe Joanna or some people don't even think of what they're doing as instructional design and e-learning development work, but they are designing and developing learning experiences. Maybe under the guise of like, oh, I'm like a writer, or I'm like just like a multimedia person or something. But I've seen a lot of people, and it's like okay, you've been doing this, 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 and this. These are all instructional design tasks, and you've been working with clients. You could list that as an item on your resume and say you're self-employed, as long as you have, because you were, as long as you have a good case for why you're looking for a full-time role now.
Yeah, I don't see
Because
why not. I mean, if you're self-employed, you're your own boss, right?
yeah, yeah,
But I think that's also like brings up the point of I guess using the same language or trying to use within reason, right? You don't want to just copy and paste like you mentioned before, but within
yeah,
reason, trying to mimic the language that whatever job posting you're applying to is looking for. So, instructional designer and e-learning developer, um, that works great for roles that are asking for an instructional designer and or e-learning developer. So
yeah. But if
it
it's
makes
but if the
sense.
title's different, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, tailor it to the role. Don't need to have one size fits all resume.
Right, right. Because roles vary. Like you can have 6 different roles and they all do the same thing. 6 different role names and they all do the same
Yeah,
thing. So
yeah. Curriculum developer, learning experience designer, um, yeah,
yeah.
content specialist, even learning and development specialist.
What
Seen a
are content
variety.
specialists? I don't know. I don't know that one. Is that the same thing?
Depends on the listing, right?
Go.
Yeah. But no, I have seen people who are doing full instructional design tasks with those kind of titles. Um, but this is good. Should we look at, so there's something we wanted to talk about with this one. I mean, you can see the language is all pretty instructional design friendly, right? I mean, maybe we make some minor changes for specific roles, but design and develop e-learning experiences, applying adult learning principles, developing job aids and infographics, partnering with subject matter experts. And even with some of these other roles, like let's see. Okay, English teacher. Developed and delivered in-person scenario-based learning experiences. Okay. Built and delivered adult training courses. So if this was a one-size-fits-all resume, it should make Joanna seem quite qualified and experienced as an instructional designer. But we did get a job listing from Joanna. So maybe we take a look at that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay. So we think support. Scope, design, and develop. Okay, we probably didn't use that word already on the resume, so that could be useful to include.
Definitely. Because she definitely did that, right? If she's working with clients, like she had to have done that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Create learning experiences. Yeah. I'm sure we use that language, but maybe if we said e-learning, maybe we swap that out for learning experiences. I think we said that though.
Exactly.
Aligning with business needs. Delivering on intended learning and business outcomes. And when we were planning for this, I think this is probably the biggest opportunity for improvement on this resume, right?
Uh,
Highlighting
one of
outcome.
them. Yeah, one
One
of
of
them for
them.
sure. But yeah,
So, yeah.
wait, go back to that because I think there were some other good examples of things we could include, right? So, because this list is just what they'll be doing, right? Their responsibilities.
Right.
So just one thing I guess I kind of want to point out is the whole description is something you want to pay attention to, not just the qualifications. The qualifications for sure, you want to make sure that you meet the role, but the description of what your basic duties is just as much of a qualifier for whether you're a fit for this role or not. So yeah, definitely look at that list and see just words, definitely words that stand out. You could go overkill like I probably have in the past, and to really look at all the minor words. But if you let's see, scroll down a little bit to the qualifications. Okay, so like right off the bat, something that stands out to me is like they actually list those tools: Articulate, Captivate, Google Suite, content aggregators. So if you have those, definitely include those within the skills section of your resume at the very least. You can also put them in your bullets. One thing I'm kind of an advocate for, I don't know how important this is, but they specifically mention Google Suite. So maybe, if you know Google Suite and you know Microsoft Office and you know some other, suite, you don't need to list all of those. They told you Google Suite. It seems like this is probably what they use, so you can just
Nice.
stick with that if you know all of those. It saves you some space to include other
Yeah.
things.
Good point.
They mentioned mobile learning, gamification at the bottom, interactive learning methodologies. So
Nice.
it seems like from looking at this, they're looking for somebody knowledgeable. They're looking for somebody who, even visual graphic design skills. They might be looking for a bit of a unicorn there. So that's definitely where like your portfolio can come into play. You can show that. But yeah,
Nice.
it's from each job description, you can kind of tell, okay, this is the kind of person they're looking for. Is this me? And if so, how can I really, you know, make it clear from these words that they're using that this is me? Other people are going to apply to this job too, and they're going to mail in a generic resume that doesn't exactly fit everyone of their needs. So you want to stand out. You want to make sure to check all the boxes as they're reading it.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is good insight how we can tailor the bullet points to the specific roles. And let's talk a bit about results, right? I mean, that's
No.
one of the areas for improvement here. I know that's something that can kind of make a resume go to the next level is if we can include specific metrics, right?
Right,
Or
right.
specific outcomes that we've helped achieve.
Yeah, and like as is, I think this is like a good example of probably where most people's resumes are. If I had to guess right now, like this is what most people consider like, oh yeah, this looks good. But yeah, if you want to like go that extra step, then results. Um, you may have heard of the formula of like what did you do, like this is full of the things that Joanna, I think, that Joanna did,
Yes.
but what did she achieve
Nice.
by these things? Ask yourself that question. What did I achieve by, first bullet point, designing and developing e-learning experiences to support international audiences? What did that result in, and how can you measure that result? So not just what you did, but what did you achieve? How do you measure that achievement? And so that would be somewhere where I would probably have to ask Joanna, and Joanna would probably have to think about it for a bit. But I really want to encourage people to consider those three parts. Don't get stuck on just what your responsibilities were or what you actually did. And then just focusing on that first bullet point, I think we can also point, like, just ask yourselves questions. I think for everyone else who's not Joanna, who's seeing this for the first time, I would encourage you to kind of use your critical thinking, and as you're looking at this, consider what questions you might ask Joanna to further elaborate on her experience, and asking that kind of maybe feeds back into questions that you can ask about your own resume. So for the first one, design and develop e-learning experiences to support international audiences. I like the international audiences bit because I think this job posting is a global company. They want somebody with global experience, so that's super cool. I would ask, I don't know, where were those international audiences? Were they in specific regions? How many? How many companies did you
Mm,
work with? We could talk about results. Did you meet certain deadlines? How many e-learning experiences, or what kind of e-learning experiences? What was the scope? I mean, I think you can kind of get where we're going with those examples. So you could say, something a little more specific. I'm just spitballing here, but like designing and developing virtual instructor-led training to support 8 companies in 7 countries, resulting in something. I don't know. I'd have to really think about that, but something like that automatically makes that bullet point better in this scenario, I think.
okay, right. So more detail and highlighting the outcome. And I think that might be difficult for some people just because maybe they didn't have a close eye on metrics. So it doesn't need to be like we increased engagement or enrollment by like 20%, or can outcomes look different? Do you have any suggestions on how to identify those outcomes? If yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would I know this is kind of like a lot of people are going to think like, well, dang, that wasn't me already. But but I encourage you, like, if you haven't already been trying to track metrics, any sort of metrics that you can think of, even something as simple as the number of companies that you've supported, or clients, number of users,
Okay.
or learners. Simple things like that can really help contextualize your resume. And I would encourage you to start tracking that now, because that will help you in the future. But just to give examples of, I think, what I've done in the past, when I was a teacher, I used test scores, since my students had good test scores, so I felt like I could include that as, and I contextualized it within other classes in the school that helped contextualize, knowing that these were the best test scores, for whatever grade level. That's something I've included in the past. If you have done things that are, training or learning, design related, that weren't necessarily part of your job, I think if you have metrics for those, like I helped design this teacher training program that I wanted to design, and this was before I was gonna quit, but I designed that for the teachers, and you know that helped those teachers pass a state test, for their certifications. And that's something that I could have easily ignored, but I felt, what, I'm going to put it on this resume because I feel like that's something that, I'm creating an adult learning experience and I have metrics for it. It was small, but it's still, something I can include. And then for my previous role, it was, you know, it was during the pandemic, and it was a crazy year, obviously. And but also the industry that company was in, and the type of company that it was, led to that company having its most successful year ever. So I looked at the financial data. I looked at how that company grew, year over year, and if you are having high impact in developing these training programs and rolling out these learning experiences that help people in a really fruitful year, then you've contributed to that company's growth, and I think that's something else that you can include.
Nice. Okay, so if we had to sum it up, we want to include numbers on the resumes.
Quantify
And
as much as possible.
quantify as much as possible. Nice.
Provide context.
Yep, and then the context is important too. Okay. That is good, and I see how that could really bring this resume up a notch if we were able to do that. So good suggestion there. I know we had a couple of other things to talk about on this one, but we do have 20 minutes left, so maybe we should move on to Jennifer Gladsky's, because this
Sure.
is a teacher resume, and we can see Joanna had teaching experience as well. You see, we brought in the ID keyword, I guess, to speak to that design piece.
Sure.
But let's look at this one. Jennifer Gladsky. Okay, we do have that profile section here. Creative education professional seeking to apply skills acquired as an educator to an instructional designer role, specifically in a mission-driven organization. Okay. That similar format, we have the sidebar over here, the education and skills, and then the specific roles under experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, high school English teacher. And we also have the role pulled up, but let's take a look at this first. So planned and presented engaging, objective-driven lessons.
And hey,
Okay.
Devlin, I think on my screen it's a little hard to read. I don't know if anyone else is having that issue, but me zoom in a little bit. Okay. Yeah, that's
Is this
perfect.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay, but we have some. We can see how this could apply to an instructional design role, particularly planned, maybe designed these engaging, objective-driven lessons. And then we have this level of detail in reading, writing, listening, and speaking aligned with state standards and school curriculum. What do you think about that level of detail like this?
Yeah, I think that's probably something that I certainly struggled with at the very beginning, is providing too much detail. Something that can be difficult, especially when you're looking back at your own experience. You're so close to it. Is that, just because it's importance to you or real to you doesn't mean that it's that important or applicable to every job that you're applying for. So I would say in what you've highlighted, lessons in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure if the job description mentions that at all for the types of design that they're asking for, but I would guess
Let's look at
not.
it.
So
Design and develop effective, engaging courseware.
so
So I'm
yeah,
going to try to get them both up at once.
okay. Yeah, if it doesn't specify, it's like some job descriptions will specify like technical training or leadership skills training, something like that. But if it doesn't specify, and it probably doesn't specify like language arts stuff. I was an English teacher. I get it. You're proud of that, but you probably don't have to include that in this case, since it doesn't seem like they specify that. Same with state standards. Yeah, what this company probably doesn't really care about state standards as
Yeah.
much. You don't have to just include those words, is what I'm saying. Like, that's still true. It's still true that they were aligned with state standards and school curriculum. But you can maybe phrase that a little differently, or just delete it and make space for something else that's
Yeah.
more
You could
aligned.
always share those details if they ask about it in the interview.
Right,
Right.
right. And I think most people are familiar with what a teacher does, and you have standards. It makes sense. But again, yeah, match it to the description. I coming from I was a high school English teacher myself, just like Jennifer. Uh, a decision that I made is I removed high school from my title, and I see Jennifer has a middle school language arts teacher down below. I don't think it's necessary. I would remove that. It's not as relevant for a company what grade level you taught, um, because you're not going to be teaching any grades in this new role.
Right. And just looking at some of these specific bullet points, like supported students and their families who struggle to maintain connection with school. Look at this one. Build productive relationships and
Exactly.
communicate. Like, what about build productive relationships and communicated with families and their students or something like that? So we can kind of just
Exactly.
take this language right out of this job listing and say the same thing we're already saying, but now it makes us seem much more qualified for this role, right?
Exactly. And I think kind of flip flopping the next bullet point on the left and then the bullet point above on the right.
Yep, I was
So
looking at that same thing. Yep.
she learned and adopted a variety of ed tech tools such as Nearpod, Edpuzzle. Hey, I've used those too. But also, what are they looking for on the left? They're looking for somebody who can align to rapid product release cycles, flexibility, poise. So what I'm seeing on the right, I'm seeing that Jennifer was a teacher, personally as a teacher. I'm thinking she's saying, hey, I was a teacher during 2020. We had to learn a shit ton of stuff. We had to be super flexible. So here's what she's trying to say. But on the left is kind of more what what they're actually looking for. So you can make that a little more clear. And I'm sure Jennifer will have a lot to say about how she is very flexible and had to stay poised in learning a lot of tools. They're not looking for ed tech tools, so I might remove the word ed tech. They
Right.
probably have no idea what Nearpod and Edpuzzle are.
Right.
So I'd probably remove those. And if you have experience with some other tools, I might include those if you
Would
use those.
would you go so far as to say like aligned to rapid tech changes with flexibility and poise? Aligned and adapted to rapid tech changes with like would you use the same language to that level?
Yeah, and actually, I was looking at this before. I think there was a different bullet point that also spoke to just learning technologies. I might be confusing with someone else in the job description.
Hmm.
But let's see. Yeah, scroll down.
Proven ability to learn new
Exactly.
technology quickly.
Yeah. So you can use the phrasing like I learned new technology um,
Yeah.
in that scenario. I guess that's more of an interview thing, but still something you can mimic in your phrasing.
Nice. And some of these like served as senior class advisor, planning year-end events. Like we could probably just remove things like that if it's not making you more qualified for this specific role.
Yeah, kind of like we were talking about before with strong verbs. Serving as anything is not strong. I think anyone can say
True.
that. Planning year-end events. If this job description includes something about planning events, great. If not, just remove it.
Good. Good. And I think that's the question to ask ourselves when we're looking at our own resumes. It's like, does this listing make me more qualified for this specific role? And if you're just trying to do like a generic resume starting point, maybe ask, does it make me more qualified for an instructional design role if that's what you're going for? And if we have things that maybe are nice or like impressive in this specific context, like if you were applying to a teacher role, it might be impressive, but to an instructional design team, it might not give you much credibility, and it might just dilute the effectiveness of your resume.
Right, right. For sure.
But this is good. Okay, we have a little bit of time left. I see a lot of opportunity here. Yeah, so many we could. Yeah, we just gotta. It's just a matter of tailoring, right? Yeah, looking at each role and then say, okay, how did I do these things in this role? And
Right,
yeah,
right.
wording it accordingly.
It's just like going back retrospectively and really changing the language through this lens of this job and the language they're using.
All right, should we take a look at one more at Caroline's?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's see here. So this is Caroline's resume. Um, we have an instructional design portfolio link here, but and we're working on the portfolio site. And I think my biggest suggestion for Caroline, we were talking about this last night, was going with something more closely related to your name for your URL for a portfolio, especially if you're looking for a full-time role. So
Okay.
instead of like coming up with some business name or something like that, just and I know CarolineRoberts.com isn't available, but there are always ways you can combine like your initials with maybe like keywords or abbreviations like ID or learning or design or LXD. There are a lot of options out there, even if your first last.com is taken.
Good tip.
Okay. And
Yeah,
then I noticed we have a variety of titles here: learning experience designer and instructional designer portfolio. Maybe being consistent with the titles we use in line with the job description.
exactly. And
Okay.
I don't think you need to read it honestly. For the portfolio line, I think
Yeah,
you can just say
true.
portfolio.
Portfolio. Yeah, I think so
Just
too.
make it easier for them.
And then Caroline has been doing some client work as well. So I would use the title. What do you want to call yourself as you're doing that work? Do you want to call yourself a freelance learning experience designer? That would give you more credibility than founder. And it might make it an easier conversation about how, yeah, you've been doing this in the interim as you maybe build up your portfolio even more. Or like if your eventual goal is a full-time employee, it may be confusing to position yourself as a founder of a company.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. I'm definitely with you on the freelancer, right? Like just freelancer, there's so many different types of freelancers. Definitely specify what your role is.
Right.
And just something small. I don't know if other people notice this, but definitely want to proofread. So like on the right, I see the LinkedIn link is actually not a link. It's missing the .com. So that's, something you want to make sure you check on. And
True.
yeah, just little things like formatting like that.
Nice. Yeah. Proofreading, of course. And then some bullet point. Yeah, we want all of our bullet points, of course, to start with the strong action verb in
Mm-hmm.
line with the job description, of course.
Yep. And actually, just one other formatting thing that I'm kind of noticing, because I think it is reflective of your just design, right? You designed this resume. I really like this format in general, but I think if you compare it to like the other resumes that we looked at, having that one bold line include your title, your company, and in some cases the location, as is the case in the second one, and the years that you worked. It's a lot to include in one bold line. It's not easy for me to take out individual pieces of information. So maybe move some of that information to the next line, or unbold some of it so that it's easier to locate that information and make it
Nice. Okay.
consistent
So
too,
more
because
more hierarchy. Yeah.
yeah,
Good.
and make it consistent because like having the location in one and not the other can also be confusing.
Nice. Okay. And then I see we have some achievements here. It's good.
Yeah. Okay. So this is more of like what we're talking about, right? This is good. I like this.
Yep.
You're giving context, how many employees. There was something I was looking at this earlier, and I thought of something because I think the principal role, like that's cool. Like that's not only are you in the world of education, but you are also, yeah, you're in charge of all these adults. So let's say they're adults, which is what you're probably trying to do in this next role. So I think this resume for me was missing. Um, you have the adults, like the employees, right? You supervise them. Um, I would say, are you supervising in this role that you're applying for? I don't think so, based on the role that she's applying for. So I would move
Probably
that.
not. Yeah.
I would move that down in the hierarchy here. You probably don't want that to be a first one. Um,
Yeah.
but I really liked the bullet point that was second to last here. Led transition and wrote manual for 100% remote learning and options of at-home synchronous virtual learning and face-to-face learning. Um, I think that's probably relating to 2020 as well, right? Just the transition to remote, difficult time. I think that's something you definitely want to highlight, and that deals more with learning in general. So I would probably move that higher up to the top, probably, because
Yeah.
that's a little more relevant and I think more impressive for this role.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really picking out the relevant pieces from from these different responsibilities lists. And of course we have the listing here. And I think we get the idea of changing the language, but that's what we would go through with each one of these bullet points. Does it fit? Does it make me more qualified for this role or for instructional design roles in general? And if not, maybe we can get rid of it. Like for this bullet point, it seems like we can get into something more ID related with this piece of it.
Yeah, exactly. I want to know more about that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I see we mentioned this a bit here, but this is kind of like in parentheses, it's like an afterthought. Maybe we start out strong with some of these and then lead into the achievement to achieve X. But yeah,
Yeah,
this is a really interesting one too. Good point calling that out. And then we have some other instructional design related tasks in here as well. Good. But okay. Hopefully this exercise was helpful. We don't have a ton of time for Q&A, but
yeah, that's a lot.
Angie's
we
asking
could
about
go on.
resume. Angie's asking about resume review services. So I just help out people in the boot camp, which is like a bigger thing. Ivan, I know you've been thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
We'll say connect with Ivan on LinkedIn.
Chat.
Maybe reach out to Ivan and you can see where that conversation goes. So I'm gonna share the call to action if you want to connect with Ivan on LinkedIn, which I suggest all of you do. Ivan is passionate about helping the community, but he's really busy, and we're lucky he agrees to the webinar asking to come out for. So, but you never know. One day maybe Ivan will be on YouTube or writing
No.
articles. Never say never, Ivan.
Devlin keeps pushing me to do that. I don't know about that.
Well, I know you want to help and like to help. So
Yeah.
great. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Feel free to reach out to either of us on LinkedIn if you have questions. Also join the Slack community if you're not in there already and if you want to get more perspectives. But yeah, the main takeaway, tailor your resume to the job you're applying for, right? And as much as you may like and be proud of some of your achievements or the responsibilities you held, it might be better to just not include them on your ID resume. I think that's the most help I give people when we look at resumes together.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Yep. Any final words from you, Ivan, before we shut it down?
No, I was also gonna say, like we just did this super fast. Like for me, it does take a lot of time, and so like
Yeah.
give yourself that that be honest with yourself, and also just go easy on yourself, because it's gonna take a lot of time, and you're gonna get it to where it's perfect, and then it's not going to be perfect, you know, in a few days, because you just keep improving on it, you keep iterating, and adjusting, and seek feedback from anyone. I think it's always important to get other people's eyes on it.
Yeah. Feedback is love, everybody. So get as much feedback as you can. You're not in this alone. And I will see you all soon. Thanks again, Ivan. Maybe we'll collaborate again sometime soon too, but nothing planned yet. All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Thanks, Ivan. Bye-bye.